through life and getting to that place where your vehicle gets stuck, people wonder, how do I get out? My name is Coach Judy Mzungu. I am a Kingdom Life Coach, and my job is to equip you to find your identity, to heal, and rediscover the path to your purpose. And so even as we delve into this matter, the first thing that needs to happen actually is your healing journey. Unless you heal in the soul, to be able to go back and find out where did the rubber meet the road? Where did something begin to go wrong? That's where the beginning of the journey starts. Unless you're able to go back emotionally and begin to deal with the state of your emotions, you will not be able to rise again. But I must say something. Many times, even in dealing with the issues of healing, many times, even as we deal with the vehicles of our life getting stuck, we talked about it in the last video, where many people come with a spanner and they just are asking you to open the bonnet, asking you rev, and then trying to fidget. And before long, you probably will feel better for a short while. And then after a short while, you still have to go back and keep going back. The main thing is you have to check the state of your spirit before you can even begin to touch the engine. True healing comes from an encounter, from a place of relationship with God. Because it is only by the Spirit of God, partnering with the Spirit of God, where you can be able to truly have the courage, truly have the confidence to say, I can face up to whatever happened to me in the past. Too many times, by the way, the reason why we are unable to deal with the issues of the past is that truly those things were painful and they're difficult to go back to unless by the Spirit of God. When you go back to the book of Judges and we encounter chapter 6, we encounter Gideon. Gideon was at the same place where life was not working for him. Actually, Bible says that in this particular point, when God located Gideon, he was threshing wheat in the winepress. He was operating at a place much lower than his level. He had reduced his capacity to dream. He could not see a vision of what it is that God had put in him or where he even needed to go in the first place. And you remember, if you go back to Judges chapter 6, go back and read that scripture. Bible says that the first thing that God reminded Gideon was his identity. If there's one thing that will be taken out by the issues of life, is actually the capacity of your spirit to truly communicate what it is that God deposited in you. Remember that what God deposited in you is in your spirit. Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5, before I formed you in your mother's womb. So it means that for true healing to happen, the first port of call is to awaken your spirit. So that if you can be able to remember your identity, if you can be able to remember who God created you to be, then you can take the next step and face up to the issues of your life. When Gideon was told that you are a mighty warrior, his confidence was restored. He began to see himself correctly. Then what happened next is that God now begins to tell him, now this is your next assignment. But that would mean that what happened to Gideon is that one, his identity was awakened. And then I want to take a step by step to see what did Gideon do next for him to be able to recover and fulfill purpose. You realize that Gideon came to that place where he actually made an offering to God. That is the place of dying to self. Too many times in our journey to recovery, in our attempt to recover, what we tend to do is to go for the healing of the soul. So we capitalize, we focus too much on the soul, whereas what we need to do is to allow the flesh, the soul to die, the self to die. It's the place of surrender. Because it's in that place of surrender where your spirit is awakened, where your spirit worships God, that now you will have capacity to face up to whatever had been holding you in your soul. When yourself dies, in that place of worship to God, your spirit is awakened. The next thing that will happen is that you will be able to deal with the issues of your past. Let's go back to Gideon. After he had offered the offering, made the offering, meaning that his self had died, it was his spirit that was awakened. You will realize in the word of God that that was the time that now God instructed Gideon to go and deal with the altar of the past. It's easy for us, especially in this part of our world, to think about altars and begin to think about all those things that had been done by our fathers in the past. How about for just one moment, you think about that altar being your mindset, processing things on the basis of your past pain, past bitterness, past anger, and whatever it was. Once your spirit is awakened, once you know your identity, you will go to that place where you will have the courage to look at your past, to look at your past experiences, to look at your past bitterness. What is it that happened to you in the past that somehow changed your personality, that we could not see the truth of your identity? This is that moment that now you can begin to interrogate once your spirit is awakened. What happened to you in the past? So that you can be able to have a shift of mindset. Many times I know I've had sermons about mindset, but you cannot change your mindset running on the old software. Something must be able to happen, which means that you must tear down the former altar. You must be able to have a reset of the mindset. You know what? I come from the older generation where we used to have these cassette systems. And in those days, there was a way that you could, using a biro pen, you'd turn the cassette, just the cassette, and be able to spin it round. And that cassette would play the same song over and over and over again because it was recorded. For you then to be able to impute a new song or new music, you had to press play and record. And what would then happen as the cassette goes round, what then happens is that it is erasing, cleaning up the old system. It's possible by God. For the old system of the old beliefs, based on the things that had happened to you in the past, by the reason of healing, to be flushed out, so that then you can impute the truth of your identity. Judy, is it possible? Do you know what you're talking about? Yes. For 40 years of my life, I carried pain, I carried anger, I carried bitterness, until by the grace of God, I went back to the presence of God in what looked like a wilderness season. But it is in that wilderness season that God enabled me to see what it was. Remember, my spirit was first awakened, and then secondly, He enabled me to see what it was that had wounded my soul. When healing happened, that's when the truth of my identity was able to flow from my spirit through my soul, and I was able to begin to pour out my gifts and abilities again. Too many of us have gifts, have abilities, have talents that have been covered by the old system of the mindset of pain. We're talking about the journey to recovery. It's possible, brother and sister, for you to be able to recover. It's possible as you go back to the place of worship, as you surrender and allow God to begin to reveal to you whatever had happened to you, and surrender. Then you begin to tear down the old altars. Tearing the old altars is removing the old mindset. Did I have old mindset challenges? Of course. I didn't think highly of myself. Life had beat me down. I didn't even think I had gifts and abilities. But by the reason of healing, today I am speaking to you. The gift that I use today is the gift that I had as a child. And I believe you too have a gift. If only you can allow God to heal you. As He heals you, then what is in your spirit can begin to flow out again. I'm still talking about the journey to recovery, and we are focusing on Gideon. Once you tear down the altar and you remove the old mindset, you have to be able to make the sacrifice and remove yourself from the familiar. You know what? You have lived it yourself for maybe 20 plus years, 30 plus years, 40 plus years, for some 50 plus years. And you have lived with the trash. And so for you to be able to move forward and begin to see the truth of your identity will mean that you have to make a sacrifice and say, I am removing the old and I am willing to walk to the new. It's easy to talk about that when we're talking about, maybe one thing to another and you can see the clear switch. But when the light bulb comes on and you see the truth of who you are, sometimes fear gets the better of us, and we are unable to move forward because we think we don't have capacity to do it. My encouragement to you is that the fear is normal as you journey towards recovery. Don't hold back. Push past the fear. And what will help you to push past the fear? 1, your faith in God, the Spirit. And 2, the strength of the signal that you see within you. What do you see within you? When you're thinking about recovery, people think big things. As I was recovering, I just had one gift that I could see, writing. I didn't do much with it. All I did was to have the courage to go and make a post on Facebook. And that one post, because of the response that it got, is what gave me courage to keep posting every week to encourage people. You may have gone through a situation. You may have gone through a circumstance. You may have gone through a life experience. You can use it. That is what is gold in your hands. What can you use to come out and be a blessing to humanity? I'm talking about the journey to recovery. Allow me to speak to Black Africans for a moment. We give up on ourselves a little too early. I recovered at the age of 40. How old are you? I'm not 40 anymore. Years have gone by, but I can tell you, at whatever stage and age in your life, it's possible for you to recover. I'm talking about the journey to recovery. And the next thing that you will realize is that in Judges chapter 6, verse 32, that there was an identity change concerning Gideon. When you begin to recover, your identity will change. No longer will you be identified by the failure, by the delay, by the shame, by the reproach of the past. No. I know. I've been there. I've been looked down upon. I've been broke. I know what it is to be mocked. I know what it is to face reproach. But I come back to you to tell you that it is possible for God to change your identity. But many times as believers, we sit and wait for God to do the work. No. You have to allow yourself to partner with God. Psalm 115 verse 16, I believe, says that the highest heavens belong to God, but the earth He has released to man. That means there is a participatory role for you as a believer to believe, to have faith, to surrender the pain, to surrender the bitterness, to come to Him in worship, to die to self, and then as you begin to see that one gift, to begin to utilize it. How will you have courage? Judges chapter 6:33, you'll realize that the Spirit of the Lord was upon Gideon. And that's why we started by talking about dying to self. Because you cannot make it in this journey of life depending on self. I know the world exalts self in this day and age. But for us to heal, recover, make our way, and be able to continue to fulfill purpose, every step of the way, you need a relationship with God. Because there will be challenges in the journey, yes. You will fear, but God. You will doubt, but God. You will be anxious, but God. You need the Spirit of God. You need an ongoing relationship with God. And finally, how will you recover? You have to look past your shortcomings, because you will have them. Remember Gideon? He talked about his shortcomings. But God will use that which is in your hand, as small as it is, as little as it is. As a matter of fact, God enjoys when we are limited, because that's when we will know that all glory goes to Him. What is your shortcoming? What do you think is holding you back? Is it the lack of finances? Is it the lack of followers? Is it that you don't have support? All that doesn't matter. This conversation about the journey to recovery is actually an introspective conversation. Look within you. Because as you begin to look inside of you, as your faith in God is strengthened, as you see your gifts and abilities, that's all that you need. Once that is awakened, then by the grace of God, you will push past, and you'll be able to rise above even when there are challenges going on around you. Just so you know, you will face rejection. But that rejection will not be anything compared to what it is, the vision that God has deposited in you. The journey to recovery is really a battle for your vision. My name is Coach Judy Mzungu Jababi. My assignment is to help you rise again. See you on the next broadcast.